Hey guys, so today we're going to be starting our first proper lesson that's actually going to dive into some of the math that we were talking about in the first video. So the way this is going to work is we are going to start with our first topic, which is multiplication and division. Now there are two types of multiplication that we're going to cover, and we're going to start with multiplication. And then once we finish that later on, after the next couple of videos, then we'll move on to division. So there are two types of multiplication that we will cover. And the first is long multiplication. So for those of you who were in my class last year, which as of right now I believe is all of you, this would have been the kind of multiplication that we did at the start of the year. There is a second method that we'll do this year called lattice multiplication, and I'll show you guys that one in the next video. Alright, but in this one we're going to start with long multiplication, and so I'm just going to go through a few examples and we will sort of break down the steps as we go. So let's do an example. I've got my notes with me just to make sure that my answer matches the correct answer. So let's start off with something like 4,132 multiplied by 57. Alright, so we're going to start off with something like this. Hopefully you guys are able to see that already. Let's see if I can get this a little bit closer just so you can see that a little bit better. Alright, something like that. So we're going to start off with 4,132 times 57. So the way you want to set this up is you're going to put the first number like so, just write it down, and you're going to line up the tens and the ones column for the 57. So you're going to put the 5 here and the 7 over there and a multiplication sign. So you're going to write it something like this. So basically you want, right here we've got the ones column, so we want the ones terms to line up. So this 2 and this 7 should be lining up in the same column, and then over here we've got the tens, and they should be lining up. And then similarly over here we have the hundreds, and over here we have the thousands. So we want all of those things to be lining up as best as we can. So we're going to line up these tens and ones because we don't have any hundreds or thousands to worry about in this particular question. So the way this is going to start is you're going to take this 7 down here, so you're going to take the number that's in the ones place of the second column that you've made, or of the second row, sorry. So you're going to take the ones term from the second row, and you're going to multiply it by each of the digits in the top row. So you're going to start with the 7, multiply it by the 2, then the 3, then the 1, and then the 4. So we're going to do it in the following way. So let me get rid of those arrows so that we can actually start multiplying this. So first we're focusing on this 7. We're going to ignore the 5 for now. So what you do is, I'm actually also going to get rid of these arrows up here with the ones, tens, hundreds, and so on. So there we go. Now we've cleaned this up a little bit, and I'm actually going to get rid of the problem as well, just so that we have some more space to work with. So we're going to start with this 7, and so what we do is we do 7 times 2. If you calculate that, you'll get that 7 times 2 is 14. So we know that 7 times 2 is equal to 14. So what you do with this 14 is you take the 4, put it down at the bottom, and this 1 is going to get carried over into the tens place. Alright, now when you do the next one, so now we've done 7 times 2, so we move over to the next one. We do 7 times 3, and we get 7 times 3 is 21, and then you take this 1 and you're going to add it on to the end of that. Alright, so so basically the first step is you'll take this and you'll multiply this times that, and then you're going to add on whatever you've carried from the previous term. So we've got 7 times 3 is 21, plus 1 is 22. So because we've got a 22, this 2 is going to sit down here, and this 2 is going to get carried up top over there. Now, we do 7 times 1. 7 times 1 is just 7, plus 2. 7 plus 2 is 9. Since we're not carrying anything, we can just put the 9 there, and we're done. And now we do the last one. So we've done 7 times 2, we've done 7 times 3, we've done 7 times 1, and now we move over to 7 times 4. So 7 times 4 is 28, and because there's nothing left over here for us to carry this over to, we just write 28 down here, like so. And then you move on to the next line, but here's where you get to make a little bit of a choice. So, I really hope you guys are able to see that clearly. It looks alright on my end, but if you guys are struggling in the first lesson or two, then let me know ASAP so I can try and figure out an alternative setup. This is kind of temporary right now. But anyway, back to the problem. So, this is what we've got so far. We've done everything that we need to do with this 7 right here. Now we're going to repeat the same process, but with this 5. Now the catch here is that this 5 is in the tens place, right? We have the ones over there, and then the tens over here, and the hundreds and the thousands. So because this 5 is in the tens place, it's almost like we're doing 4,000, well, I mean it is like we're doing 4,132 times 50, and then we'd already done this right here is the answer, this whole thing right here is the answer to 4,132 times 7. So we need to now do 4,132 times 50, and then we can add the two together. And so if that's not the most obvious thing to think about, then you can just try and remember this process. So you're going to repeat the exact same thing we did with the 7, but we're going to do it with the 5 this time. But instead of starting all the way over at the end, we're going to start one place over. And to remind yourself of that, there are two things you can do. Some people prefer to put a 0 here. I don't like that for one major reason, which will kind of become evident in a later problem. But I like to put an X here, and it just signifies that it's a 0, but it's not one of the zeros that we've calculated. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So now let's redo what we did with the 7, multiplying by each of the digits in the top row, but we do it with the 5 now. So we start with the 5. And before we do that, I'm going to get rid of these numbers that we carried. That was just from the 7 before. We don't need those anymore, so we get rid of them. So now we do 5 times 2. 5 times 2 is 10. So from the 10, the 0 is going to go down here. And the 1 is going to get carried over to here. Alright, so that's with the 3. So the next thing you do is going to be 5 times 3. That's 15 plus 1, 16. Right, 5 times 3 is 15, 15 plus 1 is 16, so the 6 goes down here, and the 1 gets carried over there. You do have to be careful, but that because we've started off by moving over one place, that the 6 for the 16 isn't going to line up with that 3. We're doing the multiplication here, but the 6 doesn't line up in the same column. It's one spot over because we've started one spot over. So it gets a little bit confusing with where the numbers go. But just go from right to left and keep everything lined up as best you can, and that's all you can really do. So the next step here is you take 5 times 1. 5 times 1 is just 5, and then you take this 1 here and add it onto the end, so you get 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6, so we get another 6. And then last but not least, we do 5 times 4. 5 times 4 is 20, but there's nothing over here for us to carry it. Carry that 2 over to, so we just write 20 down here like so, and then we're going to put a line right here, and we're going to add. Alright, and then, so now we're almost done this problem. I don't like that line. So we're going to have this line here, and we're going to add. So remember, this x here signifies a 0. If you'd prefer to put a 0 there, you can. I'm going to do another example a little bit later on where you can see perhaps why I don't like to put a 0 there. So we start here, 4 plus 0, that's just 4. 2 plus 0, that's just 2. 9 plus 6, that's 15, and you carry the 1. 8 plus 6 is 14, plus 1 is 15, carry the 1. 2 plus 1 is 3, and the 2 is just a 2. So your final answer should be 235,524, and that's what matches my answer from earlier, which matches the calculator. So you can see, hopefully, that that this works. And if you don't believe me, then you can punch it into a calculator yourselves, and you'll see that it spits out the same result. So now I'm going to do another example of this. I'll do it a little bit faster this time. So I'm going to write the problem out, and then I want you guys to see if you can, if you want to try it, you can pause the video and try it yourselves first to see if you get the answer. I'm going to go a little bit faster than I did for this one. So I'm going to basically write it out more at my pace. Not completely, but I'll go a little bit faster. But I'll just explain what I'm doing as I go along. So the question is 9,062 times 54. Okay, so this is the problem. So you guys can try it alongside. So we start with this 4 with the number in the ones place, and we're just going to multiply this 4 by each of those digits in the top row, going one at a time. So we're going to do 4 times 2. 4 times 2 is 8. That's going to go there. Next is 4 times 6. 4 times 6 is 24. So from the 24, the 4 is going to go down here, and the 2 is going to carry up there. 4 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 2 is 2. So that goes there. And then we get 4 times 9 is 36. So that will go there. And then I'm going to put an X. You can put a 0 if you like. In the next example, I'm going to show you why I don't like putting a 0. You'll see it maybe more clearly in the next example. So here now we do the same thing that we did with the 4, but we're going to do it with the 5. So we start with 5 times 2. 5 times 2 is 10. We're going to carry the 1. Oh, we don't need this 2 from earlier, so I'm going to get rid of that. So we carried the 1. 5 times 2 is 10, carry the 1, perfect. 5 times 6, that's 30, plus 1, that's 31, so the 1 goes here, and the 3 carries. 5 times 0 is 0, 0 plus 3 is 3. 5 times 9 is 45, so that just goes right there, since we've got nothing else to carry it over to. And we add. So, just adding the way you normally would in columns. 8 plus 0, that's 8. 4 plus 0, that's 4. 2 plus 1 is 3. 6 plus 3 is 9. 3 plus 5 is 8. And the 4. So your final answer should look something like 489,348. So that's a very similar problem to the last one. It was a 4-digit number times a 2-digit number. The process is exactly the same. I was actually just to reinforce my confidence in myself in doing this, I was doing an 8-digit number times a 4-digit number, and it all works out just the same. So you can do this with any two numbers that you're multiplying together. So now I'm going to do one more example, and you guys will hopefully see what I mean with this business of putting a 0 instead of an X. Alright, so the next example, if I can get rid of this whole thing. The next example adds sort of one level of complexity, and then maybe I'll do the really long example as well, just to round off this class, just so you can see one last point that I want to highlight. So here we've got 217,935 multiplied by 640. Alright, so we're going to go through this one together. When it comes time for you guys' assignment, it's not going to be this hard. It'll be like 3-digit by 2-digit numbers, or 4 by 2, maybe 4-digit by 3-digit, but it's not going to be something like 8 digits by 7 digits or anything crazy like that. Alright, so we'll start here with the 640 here. It's nice anytime that you have a 0 in that second number that you're working with, so the lower of the two numbers that you've written down. So this 0, I could go through and I say, okay, 0 times 5 is 0, but I'm just going to have a string of zeros, right? This is 0, that's 0, that's 0. You know, 0 multiplied by all of these things is just going to give me a line of zeros. So I would just have something like this. And then when I move on to the 4, I'm going to have to put that x there. So to save myself time, because I've seen that I have a 0 here, I just ignore that whole first line, and I just start with an x. Alright? But I'm actually, for the point I'm trying to highlight, I'm going to put a 0 this time. Alright? So this is in place of the x that I was writing before. I've put a 0. So now we start with this 4, and we're going to do 4 times 5. 4 times 5 is 20. So from the 20, the 0 is going to go down here, and the 2 is going to carry up there. Now 4 times 3 is 12, plus 2. 12 plus 2 is 14, so the 4 goes here, the 1 goes there. 4 times 9, that's 36. 36 plus 1, that's 37. 4 times 7, that's 28. 28 plus 3, that's 31. So the 1 goes there, the 3 carries. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 plus 3 is 7. We don't need to carry anything. And 4 times 2 is 8. Now, here's where it gets confusing. For the 6, I have to move 2 places over, right? For the 0, I wouldn't have put any x's. For the 4, I would have put 1 x. So I would have put an x there, but I put a 0 for the sake of this point that I'm trying to highlight. Now for the 6, if I had put an x here, then it's fairly clear. Okay, I put 1 x in the last line, so I should put 2 x's in this line before I start. But if you're used to putting zeros, then you might see it as, well, I had 2 zeros in the previous line, so I should have 3 zeros in this line before I start. But we've put 1 0 too many, because this 0 didn't come from the fact that we've moved over some number of spaces. This came from the first product that we were trying to actually compute. 4 times 5 is 20. That's where this 0 actually came from. So you might accidentally confuse yourself. It happened to me lots of times when I was younger. I would confuse that all the time when I put zeros there, because my teacher said put a 0, so I put a 0 there. But if you put an x instead, if you put an x for, because you've moved over 1 place, you put an x. If you move over 2 places, you put 2 x's. And now you start with the 6, so now you're starting in the right spot. Before we had 3 zeros, we would have been starting 1 spot even farther over this way, and that's going to mess up our whole answer. So we can cross these out because we're starting with a new digit, and we'll do it again. So we start here, 6 times 5 is 30, so the 0 goes down here, and the 3 carries. 6 times 3, that's 18, plus 3 is 21. There we go. 6 times 9, that's 54, plus 2 is 56. The 5 carries. 6 times 7 is 42. 42 plus 5 is 47. 4 carries. 6 times 1 is 6. 6 plus 4 is 10, so we get a 0 there. And the 1 carries. And then we got 6 times 2 is 12, plus 1 is 13. So we got this over here, and then we're going to add that whole thing. Now here, this is just a 0, right? These are just placeholders for zeros, all of these x's here. So 0 plus 0, that's 0. Another 1, 0 plus 0 is 0. 4 plus 0 is 4. 7 plus 1 is 8. 6 plus 1 is 7. 7 plus 7 is 14, carry the 1. 8 plus 1 is 9. 3 by itself, 1 by itself. So your answer should be 139,478,400. Does that agree? 139,478,400, yes. So that is the right answer that you should be getting. If you had one extra 0 here because of the confusion from earlier, then all of these digits would have been pushed over by one spot, and that's going to mess up your whole answer down there. Now, really quickly, just to round off this video, I'm going to highlight one last point, but I'm going to do it with that complicated example that I did earlier. I'm just going to flip to that over here so that I can check my work as I go. It's a little bit long, and we don't have that much time left, so I'm going to kind of speed through it, more at the pace I was doing it earlier, but I'm going to pause in the middle to just point out one quick thing. So, the number I was working with here, we had 2549 1307. Alright, I'm actually going to move that over a little bit. 2549 1307. 2549 1307. And then I was multiplying that by 6887. Alright, so that's actually 25,491,307 multiplied by 6,887. I encourage you to say the numbers properly and not just read out the digits. Alright, so I'm going to sort of speed through this just so because we're a little bit short on time. So we start with 7 times 7 is 49, 9 goes there, 4 carries. 7 times 0 is 0, plus 4 is 4. 7 times 3 is 21, carry the 2. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 2 is 9. 7 times 9 is 63, carry the 6. 7 times 4 is 28, plus 6 is 34. 7 times 5 is 35, plus 3 is 38. 7 times 2 is 14, plus 3 is 17. Now we do the same thing with the 8. I'm going to get rid of those numbers. 8 times 7 is 56, carry the 5. 8 times 0 is 0, plus 5 is 5. 8 times 3 is 24, carry the 2. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 2 is 10, carry the 1. 8 times 9 is 72, plus 1, 73. 8 times 4 is 32, 32 plus 7 is 39. 8 times 5 is 40, 40 plus 3 is 43, carry the 4. 8 times 2 is 16, 16 plus 4 is 20, so I'm going to do that. Now, here's where I want to just pause briefly. Notice that we just did the same, we just did the calculation for the 7 and the 8. I have another 8 over here. The only difference is that it's one place over, so I put the extra x. But now, I don't actually need to recalculate all of those products individually. I can just read off this line, this 2039304556, and just copy it down here, moving everything one space over. So I could take this 6 and I'll put it right here, this 5 and I'll put it right here, 4 over here, 0, 3, 9, 3, 0, 2. 203930456, and then the 2 x's. So now I have to put 3 x's, and I do the last step, which is this thing with the 6. The same process as before. I'll get rid of all of these extra numbers, and we do the same thing with the 6. So we do 6 times 7, that's 42. 6 times 4 is 0, plus 4 is 4. 6 times 3 is 18. Carry the 1. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 1 is 7. 6 times 9 is 54. Carry the 5. 6 times 4 is 24. 24 plus 5 is 29. 6 times 5 is 30. 30 plus 2, 32. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 plus 3 is 15. And we're going to add. All of these. So 9 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0, that's going to leave me with a 9 at the end. 6 plus 4 is 10, carry the 1. 6, 11, 12, 13, carry the 1. 9, 10, That's another 9 right there, so that's 10, 19, 21. Carry the 2, 4, 8, 11, 13. Carry the 1, 4, 7, 8, and 8, that's 16. 9 and 1 is 10. 7 and 3 is another 10, so that's 20, 28. 7 plus 3 is 10. Plus 2 is 12, plus 9 is 21, plus 4 is 25. 9 plus 1 is 10, plus 5, that's 15. 2 plus 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. 5 plus 2 is 7, and a 1. So we get 1, 7, 5, 5, 5, 8, 6, 3, 1, 3, 0, 9. I'm going to put these here just so that we can tell what place we're in. So we got 175,558,631,309. Does that match? 175,558,631,309. That is a match. So you can see that even with larger numbers, this process for long multiplication works. So again, on your assignment, the problems aren't going to be quite this hard, and they're not going to take this long. But I just wanted to highlight with this question that you can really simplify the amount of work you have to do by doubling up, taking advantage of situations like this, where you've done all the math for one line with the 8s, so you don't need to do it a second time. You don't need to manually go through it a second time. You can just copy-paste your answer and move everything over one place, and it will give you the correct answer. So that's it for long multiplication. If you guys have any questions, leave a comment. In the next video, we will be going over the other type of multiplication, the other way to sort of draw it out and get the answer, and that's called lattice multiplication. And I'll show you that it gets you the same answer by repeating a couple of these problems and doing a couple of new ones. And we'll see you in the next video then, I guess. Have a good one.